Warmer weather is here, and with the change in season, it requires a new focus on fleet maintenance. My name is Jamie Irvin. I'm the host of the Heavy Duty Parts Report, and in this episode, we're going to keep cool with Prestone, Coolant. We're going to talk to EverCo HVAC components, and we're going to talk about silicone hoses from FlexFab. If you're a regular listener of the Heavy Duty Parts Report, you will recognize our first guest, Colin Dilley, with Prestone. He's a returning guest from episode 199. I caught up with him at HDA Truck Pride's annual meeting in April of this year to talk about how Prestone supports its distributors.
Hi, my name is Colin Dilley. I'm Vice President of Technology and R&D with Prestone.
Colin has been in the heavy-duty parts industry for 28 years, almost 30 years, and you've been in your current role for a decade.
Correct, yes.
Welcome back to the Heavy-Duty Parts Report, Colin.
It's good to be back with you.
Fantastic. So we're at HDA Truck Pride's annual meeting, and this is a great opportunity for us to talk to independent parts and service companies and the suppliers who provide them with great products. Let's talk a little bit, Colin, about what Prestone's been doing at the fleet level to try to make sure that they have the best product on the market.
Absolutely, and that's a great place to start with any product and any service you do. If you've got to understand the new technologies that are occurring out there in the industry, because as things change, we've got to change our products to better meet the needs of all our customers.
Well, and there are changes. Like in December, the EPA announced the new regulations for engines in 2027, for example. We know that's going to change engine specifications, and obviously that means you're going to have to change along with that. But there's other things that are motivating changes in technology in the engine platform. So can you speak a little bit about what some of those changes are?
The big changes are being driven by miles per gallon still, right? You want to make the engine as lightweight as you possibly can. And because of that, they're using a lot of lightweight materials that haven't been used before, be it aluminum alloys right through to polymers, even things like 3D printed parts, which is something we've never come across before, right?
So I got to stop you there. So are they using 3D printing parts not just for like prototyping, but they're actually using them in engines now?
In engines, using 3D, not just for prototyping as with it, but it's full-scale 3D printing to produce these.
Wow. So a couple years ago, we did an episode with some engineers that used 3D printing, and at that time, we really hadn't found anybody that was actually using them in production. They were using them for testing, for prototyping, things like that. So that technology has jumped, which then has influenced engine technology.
Very much so.
Wow. So what other things are influencing or changing engine technology?
Well, I mean, everyone's aware of electrification of the industry, which faces some barriers, but as we all know, the government is breaking down those barriers with incentives and plans that they have. We're just trying to make sure that we have our fluids in the new test platforms out there on the road, doing miles, doing their normal jobs, to make sure that our coolant is fully protecting all those parts. Mm-hmm. They want to go to lighter weight engines, as I said, but that also includes the materials. Coolant is heavy. Right. So they're trying to reduce the size of the cooling system, and the only way to do that is to have a coolant that will keep that cooling system the same from day one to 1 million miles in when that truck's getting to the end of its lifetime. So we're out there testing. All our products are fleet tested. Our CoreGuard product is in the midst of a test with 18 trucks out in Minnesota. So we're always there at the forefront, and we're not just using trucks and testing them. We're working with the engine builders. We're working with their engineers. We're visiting them at their places. I mean, I'll be in Detroit next week again to understand what they're doing, to understand what their next step is so that we can provide fluids to help accommodate what they're trying to achieve.
Okay, so testing can mean a lot of things. One of the manufacturers I talked to, I don't think it was you, but they talked about a 5-season test, and the idea was you got to get through all of the different seasons at least once because the different environments trucks work in. You know, I'm from Canada, minus 40, minus 50. You're in the desert, it's quite the opposite, right? And you're running in all of these different conditions. So when you're doing these tests, how in-depth are they? And then what do you do with that information once you get it back?
So I'll give the same example of the fleet test we got running for heavy duty. It's a 5-year test. It's run in northern Minnesota. So we're going to get the seasons for sure.
Right.
At the end of this year, we're tearing down 2 of the engines. One of the engine with the core guard in, one of the engines with the current factory fill for those engines. We will dissect those engines, photograph, record them. Also, during the process of the test, every 10,000 miles, we're taking fluid samples and oil samples out of those vehicles, looking at the chemical analysis, and from that chemical analysis, we can see if anything's breaking down. We can see what might be corroding, what could be causing a concern, and then we're feeding that back to the engineers of the engine manufacturer so that they can understand what's going on as well.
Okay, so my brain as a former sales account manager that used to work for distributors and sell parts, I immediately I hear that and I start to think, wow, this is the kind of information I need to have a business development conversation with my customer about lowering total cost of operation, about making their fleets more efficient, right? This is something that I don't just have to come in with a flyer and a box of donuts, I can have some real value. So how does Prestone work with members like independent distributors like HDA Truck Pride members to use all of this information to give them confidence to sell your product and to be more effective in their role of distributing the product?
And that's the exact reason why I'm here.
Yeah.
Because as we talk on the 101s and as people come to the booth, they have a chance to hear the story, to see the data, and then we give them data and presentation materials and learning materials that they can take back to their teams. They can teach them, because the best way to sell a product is to be the expert. Yeah. If you can guide your customer with your expertise that we've given and helped them with, it helps them run their businesses better. It helps their customers run their businesses better. Trucks are expensive. You want that to last as long as possible. You want to avoid having anything that can compromise the warranty.
Yeah.
So we give them that advice as well. What trucks will this cover? Where are the warranties good? If you're out of warranty, how do you make that truck last as long as possible?
Yeah. I assume that you have a packaged product line. Do you have a bulk line as well that you sell your fluids in bulk to distributors?
Yeah, we sell everything from a gallon to a truckload, so
Okay.
And drums, totes, the whole gamut.
Yeah,
yes.
okay, that makes sense. So if you're out in the field and you're a distributor working for like an HDA Truck Pride member, and maybe you see 80 customers a week, right? And their fleets, they're working in different vocations. Have things changed? When I was selling parts, especially early in my career, things were simpler. The engines were simpler, the technology. So do we now have to match coolant to vocation?
Very much so. The coolants have changed. There's a lot of old technology coolant still out there in bottles, which has not been able to keep up with the new materials of construction of the engines.
Right.
So it's very important for us to identify with them, who are your customers? Are they on-road? Are they off-road? Construction, mining, agriculture? Which will tell us what engines are being used. Then we can guide them to the correct choices for those engines to maintain warranty and to maintain the best performance for those engines, because uptime is everything when it comes to this.
All right, well, Colin, when you're working with a group that's independent in nature, they're part of the independent service channel, how do you feel as a company and as yourself working with them, like how do you view that group? How important are they to the trucking industry?
I think they're monstrously important. Everybody's important to the trucking industry. I mean, you can't say one group is better than the other or more important. Our view is to service them all equally, to give them as much information as possible, to make them the technical experts so they can make those choices based on their expertise, not on some marketing claim. Yeah. Right? So no one is more important or less important to us, and frankly, the more knowledgeable the customer is, the better it is for us as a company. Yeah. Because we can show the data, the new technology. We're the only North American company that is actually formulating their own coolants. We're out there formulating, we're working with the engineers, we're working with the engine designers, developers, so we're getting it right.
Go a little deeper into how significant that claim that you can say you're the only North American actually is. Could you tell us like a real world example where that North American based production knowledge, actually paid off for a fleet?
We have worked so closely with some of the engine developers that we've designed the actual dynos that they test their own engines on.
Right.
We've built up the partnership through trust and through our expertise as a fluid expert, matching their expertise as an engineer to provide them the best fluids that they could possibly have for what they're trying to achieve. That has given us a great advantage over everybody else because we can now show the data why that was used, and it's evident in the approvals of the specifications we have from the engine manufacturers. So that is the knowledge we've gained. That helps us develop the best product out there. CoreGuard Command is the best heavy-duty fluid out there. We've got the data to show it. I mean, that's because we developed it ourselves in real time fleets, working with engineers, developing dynos, lab tests, all sorts of proprietary testing to give the best product out there.
You've been listening to the Heavy Duty Parts Report. I've been here with returning guest Colin from Prestone. Thank you so much for being here. If you want to learn more about these great products, go to prestone.com. Colin, thanks for being back on the show.
It's an absolute pleasure. Always good to talk to you. Thank you.
EverCo is a division of Standard Motor Products specializing in climate control components. While some distributors have been hesitant to offer HVAC, Dave Ellis was at HDA Truck Pride's annual meeting. He was talking to the members who are parts distributors about the importance of selecting the right supplier when selling HVAC components because of the support that is needed when selling those components to the end users, the fleets, the repair shops, and the owner-operators.
I'm Dave Illis. I'm the Director of Sales and Marketing for Standard Motor Products Commercial Vehicle Division, which encompasses Pollock and EverCo heavy-duty product lines.
We're here at HDA Truck Pride's annual meeting. Dave, you've been in the heavy-duty industry now 28 years. You worked in your current role for a couple of years now. Just found out we're both good Canadian kids.
Yes, sir.
Dave, welcome to the Heavy Duty Parts Report.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So you're based out of Detroit now. You've been working for this company for in this role for a couple of years. Let's talk a little bit about some of the trends that you're seeing. First of all, what is your product category? And then what are the trends you're seeing in 2023?
Yep. So we'll focus on EverCo HD, which is our heavy-duty HVAC product line.
Okay.
So what we're seeing a lot of the trends is that it's a category typically that not every distributor carries today. Some of the times they cede it to the OES manufacturer or the OES dealer, or it will go through a specialist. There's a little bit of trepidation in carrying the category because of the fact they think they can't compete with it. The trend we're seeing is now going full line, not just undercarriage or under hood, have a full line offering, and this is a great way to complement that.
So actually, now that we're at HDA Truck Pride, this is a bunch of independent parts distribution and service companies. They would probably fit into the category of people who historically maybe have been a little hesitant to sell your line, right?
Yes, and what we've done now is just show them some of the data. We invested in some data from McKay, so we see in the category who's actually doing the work and selling the parts. It's the specialist has only about 1% of that business. The OES or the OE dealer has roughly 15%, but then the balance of that market, over 75 to 80% is through the traditional fleets and the same customers that these distributors do business with every day, but they're buying those parts from somebody else.
Yeah.
So the opportunity is there. We just need to make sure that we help them recognize it, train them, and how to sell that to their customers.
Yeah. So how complete is the line? Like, what are all the different products or that comprise the line?
Yeah. So we pride ourselves on being a one-stop shop. Yeah. So we have roughly 3,800 SKUs in the EverCo line, from your bread and butter parts like compressors, expansion valves, dryers, but then blower motors, O-rings, air door actuators, a whole assortment of products that help complete the line. And it makes that customer's customer, our distributor's customer, not have to source product from elsewhere. Yeah. They can buy from one spot. And that keeps that customer captive in buying the product from them.
Well, and it actually lowers their cost because then you can imagine how much time is spent chasing parts, right?
Yes, right.
Okay, so when you look at all those different products, some categories have been really dramatically affected by changing technology on trucks. What's the situation right now with trucks in 2023?
Yeah. So interestingly enough, if you look at the year, make, model lookups potentially of a certain compressor, it can go back a number of years, back to perhaps the late 90s, early 90s, all the way up to 2018. So the technology hasn't necessarily evolved over the last 20, 25 years. There's some small pieces, expansion valves or TXV valves have now become more prevalent. But in general, the technology hasn't changed too much. It's just having the comfort level of selling that part, understanding refrigerant, some of the ancillary parts of HVAC that get uncomfortable for some people sometimes because of hazardous goods, those types of things.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, that actually makes me think of vocation. So depending on what the vocation is, like I used to sell in Edson, Alberta, oil and gas, logging, not a lot of over the road, right? A lot of times they were driving those trucks 100 miles, then stationary working all, and then 100 miles back, right? So very different environment than someone who's practically living in their truck, right? So how does a distributor who's selling these products to these kinds of fleets, and they've got maybe all of those in their territory, like how should they go about adapting the way they approach that customer?
Yeah, so the first thing is just much like they do every day is a fleet survey, going through that fleet and taking VIN numbers for that specific fleet, because there's going to be those locations that vary across that whole fleet from a day cab to a sleeper cab.
Right.
We've invested in a lot of data now to help identify that part for a day cab, sleeper cab, extended sleeper cab, because there could be some variance in the compressor. So we've now tried to offer that level of detail in the product descriptions, but when we're able to take those VIN numbers back, then we can help them really sharpen their inventory, improve their returns, improve profitability. That's the kind of key to it, is understanding what your customer is driving, what the power units are, and then inside those engines, what are the parts that we can help them identify by VIN number.
Is that information readily available through your system, like year, make, model, what they call ACES information? What does it fit, all of that?
Yeah, so we pride ourselves as a manufacturer. Standard Motor Products has a long history of really supplying top-notch data to the marketplace on the light-duty side. Much the same on the heavy-duty side. We want to supply ACES and PIES compliant data. So we're making that available to all of our customers on request. There's a small licensing agreement we sell it just to protect our IP, just like a manufacturer should.
Yeah.
But we're very open to sharing that data, and we make our website open to all of our customers and their customers. If somebody's in a service bay, they want to look up a compressor with an OE number, they go to our website without a login, it's wide open. So we pride ourselves on sharing data and being an accessible vendor to the marketplace. What I like to say is you can't sell what you can't find. Whether that's a year, make, model lookup, that's a competitive interchange, an OEM interchange. And we've now started to add that level of data, like I said, day cab, sleeper cab, and then take it to the next level of what the engine is. Is it a Detroit diesel? Is it a Cummins? Because in HVAC, we find that engine, just much like other categories in heavy duty, you have to get down to that engine to accurately identify the part.
Okay, so you've already touched on how, from a sales perspective and an inventory perspective, we can do fleet surveys, we can work with you directly, get our inventory tailored for the region that we're selling in. That's going to give the salespeople confidence to say to the customer, you don't have to go elsewhere, you can come to us. Yeah. I'm kind of curious, when it comes to this product category, are we seeing more sensors in the system that are detecting, creating fault codes and detectable by like a diagnostic laptop?
Yes, so much like I mentioned that we're a one-stop shop, there's sensors within our category. We offer other electrical part relays that all play into the flow of an HVAC system. So, and those are a little bit more complex than just a simple expansion valve that is, or even a compressor that's, it's an axial-driven unit with a pulley. Kind of simple technology. These sensors are a bit more delicate, and we pride ourselves in making sure that as a basic manufacturer of those products, which Standard Motor Products is, that we can offer a quality product that we know is going to last in the marketplace.
Right, so if you've got year, make, model, and PIES information, that's like the weights and the dimensions of the product. For the parts people, it sounds like you have repair information for the technicians. Yes. Fantastic. Well, I really appreciate you coming on the show, taking some time out of your busy day today here at the HCA Truck Pride's annual meeting. If people want to learn more about the EverCo HD line, go to evercohd.com. Dave, thank you so much for being on the Heavy Duty Parts Report.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
We're going to take a quick break to hear from our sponsors. We'll be right back. This episode of the Heavy Duty Parts Report is brought to you by Find It Parts, your ultimate destination for heavy duty truck and trailer parts. Discover a vast range of parts at finditparts.com. Don't spend hours a day looking for parts. Instead, visit finditparts.com and get them right away. Parts availability and quality have a big influence on fleets and owner-operators' total cost of operation. If they can't find a part, it means more downtime. If they install a low-quality part and it fails, it means even more costs like tow bills, hotels, meals for the driver, and lost revenue. That's why we recommend Sampa. They manufacture a wide range of advanced parts for commercial vehicles. Their website has an intelligent product search engine and broad coverage of suspension, steering, and fifth wheel components. Expect more. Expect Sampa. Visit sampa.com today. Choosing between a rubber hose and a silicone hose may seem like a trivial choice, but when the weather gets hot and your cooling system is under strain, it can be anything but trivial. Listen to episode 76 if you want to hear a deep dive on the differences between a black rubber hose and the EDM or the silicone style hose. Now, FlexFab offers high-quality silicone hoses designed to last the lifetime of the engine, and they play a big part in the trucks of the future. Now, at HCA Truck Pride's annual meeting, I got a chance to sit down with one of the owners of FlexFab to talk more about the importance of silicone hoses, why they lower total cost of operation, and how you should go about making that decision. Listen into my conversation with FlexFab.
Hi, my name is Jim DeCamp. I'm with FlexFab, and my current position is Community Liaison.
We're here at HCA Truck Pride's annual meeting, and I get the opportunity to sit down with Jim. Jim is someone who's been part of the heavy-duty industry his whole life. His company has been around for over 60 years. Jim, welcome to the Heavy Duty Parts Report.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you very much for taking the time to join us. So I had the opportunity of selling your product when I was working for distributors, and I remember having great conversations with fleets about the benefits of silicone over rubber. And what I'm wondering is, it's been a few years since I sold parts. What's changed? It's 2023. Where are things going, and how's that going to impact your company?
Sure. Good question. One, what we see with the diesel engines in the world, they're going to be here for quite a while. Yeah. It's going to be a long time till we have the infrastructure that can handle the electrification, but that is part of the future. So from the standpoint of, it's going to be many, many years, if not decades, before everything is electrified. So there's still going to be that need. The silicone hose handles the extreme variance within an engine. And so there's still a demand there. You have options to use other hoses that aren't silicone, and those options generally are lower cost. Yeah. But
I'm going to challenge that. As I was taught when I was taught how to sell your product, it's a lower purchase price, but it's not a lower total cost, is it?
In the end, no, it isn't. So on average, you'll pay 1.5 times more for silicone than you will a non-silicone hose. But what happens in the life of that engine, that non-silicone hose is going to be replaced at least 3 times. So now you spent more money in the end by going with a lower cost option. So silicone is always your most cost-saving benefit. And silicone, really, our silicone, as we've designed it for the diesel engines of the world, is to live and exceed the life of the engine. So you put our hose on once, and it's good until you replace components. So.
And the minute you're talking labor, the parts purchase price just gets blown out of the water, right?
Absolutely.
So okay, let's talk about now the trend towards electrification. Is there going to be a need for silicone hose on these e-trucks that are coming out? And obviously, to your point, they're going to be rolled out progressively over time, and that's going to be almost by vocation. So what's the future look like for that? And will people like HDA Truck Pride's parts distributors have an opportunity to sell hoses to those fleets that are using that equipment?
Yes. So as we move into the e-mobility or the electrified engine, there's going to be a high need for batteries. Batteries are the power source for the engines. Those batteries are going to require to keep them cool, not overheating. An overheated battery will not operate an engine. So there's a lot of need for the silicone hose in that cooling system to keep the batteries where they need to be temp-wise. Yeah. So there'll be a lot of silicone needs because the battery essence of the electrified engines are a lot of hoses. So.
We're here at HCA Truck Pride, so we got 150 roughly independently owned businesses. They are parts, they are service, they're the heart of the independent service channel. How has FlexFab continued to offer them support over the years, and how do you plan on extending that as technology on trucks significantly changes?
Sure. We've designed the silicone hose for every different engine, so whether it's Cat, Cummins, Detroit Diesel, every different heavy-duty truck, platform, whether it's Kenworth, Peterbilt, Mack, Volvo, Navistar, International, Freightliner, we designed the hoses into those infrastructures. So we have the solutions to the HDA network because we've designed and we know, and that's what I offer in the HDA program is the bulk of what they need. There are specific proprietary stuff that isn't available to them, but what I'm selling to them handles 85% of what's needed generally under the hood. So we have the background, we have the history, we know why it was designed for what application. The most important thing you can ever do for a customer is give them the right hose for the right application. And if you don't know it and they get the wrong hose, that customer will remember that you gave them the wrong hose. They may not remember that you gave them the right hose, but the most important thing is never give them the wrong stuff. And so I always ask, what's the application? What's the temperatures? What's the pressures? Here's the right hose.
So in your role now, you've recently changed roles. What is FlexFab doing to give back? You've had a lot of success. It's been a family business for many years, and you're doing some pretty important work. Tell me a little bit about that.
Through the success of our company, we've gained some wealth. So within that wealth, we've created a family foundation. So within that family foundation, we give back to our local community nonprofits. So one of our main priorities is childhood education. So we put a lot of emphasis in helping the childhood education program. We've actually created a system where every kindergartner in our county, when they start kindergarten, we put $50 into a savings account for them. And then over the course of their school years, they review their statement. And then the bank works with the students to teach them about saving. And all the money that they put into that over the course of the next 12 years goes to a college education or a trade school. And so they learn, if I save, I can go to school and I can go beyond high school. And we've been doing it for maybe 8 years now, and it's just phenomenal. The kids love it. The banks come to the school every month, and they review their statement. The kids can go to the bank, and they can put money in it. Their parents can put money in it. Anybody can put money into these childhood accounts, and it's an awesome experience.
Well, I enjoyed selling your line, and I appreciate the work that you've done and the way that you've supported the trucking industry and also the community. That's fantastic. Thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. For those that want to learn more about FlexFab, they can go to flexfab.com, and they will be able to learn all about the company and the great products. And I encourage you to go over there. We're going to include links in the show notes. So go there today, check them out. And if you haven't started selling silicone, you need to start. Trust me, it is well worth it for your customers. Thanks again.
Thank you.
All three of the suppliers that we've talked to in this episode rely on the independent parts distribution network to get their products into the hands of end users, the fleets, the owner-operators, and the repair shops. And that's why a network like HDA Truck Pride really is so powerful. When you think about it, combined, this group of independently owned parts and service companies hold more buying power or control more buying power than some of the larger corporately owned entities that are selling parts to the trucking industry. And this is also the place where conscientious parts people and repair techs get quality information about the products that they sell and that they install. So let's hear what our guests want you to know about their products that'll make your job easier.
I think the most important thing, which I think they know, is service interval and to make sure you follow the manufacturer's recommendations. But where we see problems, a simple thing is flush and fill of an engine. When it's time to change out that coolant, put a new coolant in, or change to a newer technology coolant. We see things such as them putting Dawn soap in there to try and rinse everything else. That's a bad idea. We provide the correct flush and fill type products as well, so that when you use these, it's not going to compromise the performance of that fluid. If you put a soap in there and then you pour in your coolant and you haven't rinsed it out correctly, you've got a lot of bubbles, and those bubbles are encapsulating all the inhibitors. You're destroying the coolant. You need a flush and fill product that's going to aid the process, do it quickly, efficiently, effectively, and not compromise the performance of the coolant afterwards. Those are the simple things that people don't think about. They spend a lot of time choosing the fluid, but what they do between fluid and fluid can often cause them some significant mistakes.
Right. So Okay, so that's some of the simple things. Now, when you're selling product, there are times when a customer will come to you and they will ask you for a specific product. Let's say they're asking for a specific product to replace inside of a cooling system. What kind of education can we provide them right here to help them, those parts people, understand the larger system? Because I hated when I was replacing a part and then I found out later there was another issue elsewhere. That part then immediately fails again, and then they're mad at us because they say we sold them a bad product, right? So when it comes to cooling systems, when I say that, what's the first thing that came to mind?
First thing that came to mind is if you're changing a part in the cooling system and you're not changing the coolant at the same time,
Right.
you might be causing that part to fail again. If the coolant is neglected, has not been changed when it should have been, or if it became low, air was entrapped in it and it caused corrosion or a failure of the part, you've got to remember to change that coolant as well as the part.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that part may not make it again.
Yeah, and it's not just about, you're not just upselling for the purpose of selling more product, right? This is a legitimate way to lower the total cost for the end user customer.
Yeah, and if you consider the cost of the part
Yeah.
compared to the cost of the coolant, there's
And
no
the labor.
comparison. And the labor. You might as well put the coolant in because, well, not might as well.
Yeah.
You have to.
Yeah.
You really do.
You mentioned the OEM specs for changing the coolant and staying within those. I know when it comes to oil and filtration, there's been a move where they are now saying, look, we don't want to change obviously we want to change it soon enough. We don't want to wait too long. But depending on the vocation, we also don't want to change it prematurely. Is that scenario, does that exist on the cooling side as well?
It does. But when you're protecting your vehicle with a warranty, you want to keep it for number one to make sure you're not going to have a warranty issue. They're a lot more stricter on warranty issues right now than they were before. And my experience has been, in I would say 99% of all vehicles that I've taken a coolant sample, it's been a mixed coolant sample and it hasn't been the right coolant.
Right.
So care has to be taken with that. Do coolants last longer? For sure. If you have new technology coolants like the Command Core Guard will last 1,000,000 miles. Remembering that 1,000,000 miles, you're going to keep topping up. So by the end of the 1,000,000 miles, you won't have all that coolant left.
Right.
But that's all taken into account. So it will last longer. That's good because it gives you a sense of protection, because when it comes down to it and you have a scheduled maintenance or you got to get a truck somewhere,
Yeah.
they'll usually choose to get the truck somewhere because that's what's paying the bills.
Right.
So it gives you that extra sense of, that extra barrier of comfort.
Yeah, okay, that makes a lot of sense. So what is probably the biggest, I'm trying to struggle for the word there, not misinformation, but maybe where people just have the wrong idea about modern day coolant. What's one of those old ideas that continues to live on and needs to be put to death?
Green, let's put green fluid to death. Green is silicated conventional coolant.
Okay.
It used to be the coolant 40 years ago, and people never had a problem with it. Because cooling systems leaked, and every week they'd put another gallon in, so you would re-inhibit the system.
Right.
As engines improved, the leakage has been reduced. One of the simplest things is new spring-loaded hose clamps. They don't leak through vibration like the old Titan ones did. The old guys who've been in the industry a long time were like, I never had a problem with green. Well, that's because you kept putting it in. Now, no leaking, you're not adding it. So 20, 30, 50,000 miles, it's now lost all its potential to protect that engine.
Yeah.
Don't use green.
But the parts people still need to be able to field those calls and be able to get the right parts in the hands, right? One of my mentors always told me, Jamie, sell them what they need, not what they ask for. Is there any common combinations of parts that when a parts person is selling your category, they should be recommending, hey, look, if you're changing that, you also have to change this?
Yeah. So what we've done, again, it goes back to the comfort level of the counterman. He's unfamiliar with the category, has a little trepidation that I can't compete with a specialist. So we just went through this, and we're talking about being Canadian. I just spent the month of February in places like Saskatoon and Regina, Saskatchewan.
You couldn't have made that in the summer? Anybody who knows that geography, that's rough travel that time of year.
I could have done much better planning that thing out. But anyway, what we really did in the course of those training sessions with the counter people is how do I, just very briefly, high level, technically how does an HVAC system work, so they're somewhat familiar with it. But then we went into the details of how do you look up that part when the customer calls you, and having that accessibility to data again goes as a key part of that. If I've got the OE number now from my customer, I punch it in our website, it'll tell me my part number, and I can identify it and sell it at that point. And then we've also trained them on, in HVAC, it's very key to replace multiple parts, reduce comebacks. Right. So when a compressor fails, you commit suicide in essence. Even if you replace that compressor and flush it, there's tiny particles of metal still flowing through that HVAC system. It'll get caught in your TXV expansion valve, your dryer. So we always recommend if you sell a compressor, sell a expansion valve and dryer, just to ensure you don't have that comeback. And the investment for the fleet is very small. It's relatively small in the scope of that sale. But we've had data on our light duty site show us that you reduce comebacks by over 10% when you replace all those key components at the same time, at the time of service. And you don't want that downtime for an HVAC unit. That's one thing you don't want to risk if you're selling it to your fleet, is downtime because of an HVAC compressor. And it seizes, and it's you've got pulleys on there. There's other components now will be impacted.
Yeah, and that downtime, I mean, the labor is going to be far more
Correct.
than the replacement parts on the initial purchase. But in addition to that, then you have all those other potential expenses that come along to having a truck down, loss of revenue, so on and so forth. Can you tell us a story of a customer that's had really good success distributing your product to a fleet or an end user?
Yeah. So we just launched a customer in 2022 that they came into it with again. It's a new category. Get some comfort level with it, and making sure the inventory was in place where it needed to be to service the customer. So that counterman training was incredibly key to make sure that he was comfortable in how to look up the part, source it, was comfortable with the category. And we learned a lot through the process with them too, that point of sale is very important. You can't sell what you don't have. Yeah. And when you look at the environment around some markets, some big metro markets, there's so many different players that have those parts in stock that we make sure we've advised them, we've learned that deploying inventory downstream at the place of purchase, it eliminates some of the sensitivity of price, because again, downtime is so valuable, and if we can get that part on the truck and replaced and get it on the road, that's much more key. So that's where the success came in, was training the counter people, comfort level, offering training. So one of the things we do as a manufacturer that is a little bit different is that we have a full training team in Irving, Texas, multiple SAE certified technicians that will go to the field in front of our fleets, work with them one-on-one on technical training, reducing comebacks, troubleshooting, even certifications, getting the advice on that. So that's the kind of service we can offer them, from selling the part, shipping the part, and then also making sure our fleets are comfortable with putting those parts on.
Right, and then you can do that in the context of selling through distribution, so
Correct.
people like HTA Truck Pride can take advantage of that.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. And then one of the things that my mentor taught me, one of my mentors, was, he's always said, sell them what they need, not what they ask for, right? So when someone comes in and they want to buy a hose, what should that parts person also be asking them? Do you need this? Do you need that?
Sure. So, like I just said, I always ask, what is your application? Because they may come in and they say, I need a radiator hose. And so then I'd go, okay, what is your radiator? What is it in? Mm-hmm. Is it in a heavy-duty truck? Is it in a stationary power? What is it, so that we make sure we give them the right product. So a perfect example is, let's say, I need a stick hose radiator. And they go, oh, okay, well, you need the 3-ply. Well, I would go, what is the application? What vehicle is it going into? And they go, well, it's in a city transit bus. I'd go, okay, what you need is the 4-ply. Because of that environment for that vehicle, it's critical that they have the right hose. Most people would just say, well, the 3-ply is what everyone uses. Yeah. So that's where it's always important to ask the questions. What's the application? What's it going into? And then tells you what product do you need.
I'm Jamie Irvin, and you've been listening to the Heavy Duty Parts Report. If you're enjoying today's episode and haven't followed the show, head over to heavydutypartsreport.com and hit the follow button. That'll take you to a page where you can sign up to our weekly email. We only send one email a week to those subscribers so that they never miss out on any of the new content that we are creating. In addition to that, some people like to watch the podcast. You can always go over to YouTube and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you enjoy listening on the podcast player of your choice, you can follow the show for free wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks again for listening, and as always, don't forget, be heavy duty. Thank you for watching this video. Click here to subscribe to the Heavy Duty Parts Report YouTube channel, and click here to watch another great episode.